It's very positive.
David, it's off to you.
Okay.
Oh, David Wick, I'm talking about.
Oh, sorry.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Rotary E-Club of World Peace on May 24th, 2022, for a very special evening and very special conversation. And prior to beginning here, I would just like us to all take a moment and just hold in our hearts the tragedy that has just taken place in Texas with the children who are killed and wounded and injured, and adults who are killed and wounded. And you know, it's tragic and it's awful for this to continue and just to happen at any time. But it is happening, and I think it also relates to the conversation tonight, which we'll learn about the deeper parts of human beings. So we'll just take a moment of just holding in silence for a moment, just the young children and all involved in this. Hold them in silence. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Rudy.
Thanks, David. I think as peace builders here, we need to take action, and all of us need to contact our congressmen and senators and speak up and say that we need to value our children more than we need to value guns. And it's time to stand up and make a statement. So anyways, that's my feeling on it. Dee, great to see you tonight.
There's a very direct way our club could help, and that is that the attorney, Shadowin, who's representing the Mexico, has filed a suit against the gun manufacturers, and 13 states have joined in that suit. While the gun manufacturers have made themselves immune to being sued in the United States, they can actually be sued in the United States by a foreign government. And so Mexico's brought that suit, and the attorney representing it is willing to speak to our E-Club, or he was when I talked to him earlier. So if you'd like, I'll see if I can arrange for him to talk to our club. I'll take that back up, because the DC organizations working for gun control are all supporting Mexico's suit.
I'll reach out to you separately here, Arthur.
Yeah, let me talk about that with the film festival too. We have
okay, we gotta keep moving through our introductions. Carol, great to see you. Barbara, as mentioned here, we all know that Barbara's in Santa Barbara, and it was named after St. Barbara, so that's our St. Barbara here. And Neil likes that. So Neil, good to see you. Anya, I haven't seen you since this morning, so that's all good.
Right.
Ben Cad, great to see you, sir. Great for joining our meeting. Brian is on from a distance here. Sala, good to see you. Andrea, you're in Arizona. You left the mountains.
I left the mountain in Nevada, and I apologize. I've been traveling every Tuesday, so I'm finally back to being in the club. Thanks.
Good to see you. Terry, great to see you. Keeping things good and over in Georgia. Tammy, how are you?
I'm doing well, and tonight I have two very special friends at Harpus that are joining us, Betty Kibble and Linda Hammond. And I invited them specially because we heard Dr. OJ, well, I heard Dr. OJ at the Consciousness Conference last year and was so impressed with his work. I shared his work with the Healing Harps for Global Peace and Unity groups. So we're excited to be with you tonight.
Great. Yeah,
Thank
Betty
you.
and Linda, great to have you with us.
Thank you.
Ray, good to see you. Been a few hours. Bob, how's everything out in Cathedral City?
We're good over here, thanks.
All right, great. Irene, sorry about what's happened up there in Ashland, but our thoughts are with that. Warren, I understand today that you might have contracted COVID as well.
Yeah, this is my last of 5 days, and so tomorrow I can be out and about a little bit, but I think I'll stay in anyway.
Yeah, well, stay safe and healthy, and I'm sure Daniil is taking good care of you.
Thank you.
Chip, how are you? Looking good there. Peter, this must be your motorhome vision.
That's it. We're in Big Bear right now, so not too far from you.
Okay, we'll see you in a couple of days here. Arthur's down south of the border here, and Melanie's on the phone. Prakash, my dear Rotary friend, tell people where you're joining us from.
Hello. Yeah. Hi, Rudy. I'm Prakash from Goa, India.
Right.
And I was always fascinated. Like, today I saw the time is there. I saw the speakers list. I've been knowing Rudy for the last 10 years, and I wanted to attend a few cause-based clubs meetings. So this is one of them, and I don't know what's the future for me.
Well, welcome. Come join us anytime,
Yeah.
sir.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Rudy.
And let's see who else we got on here. Marcia, good to see you. And John Mullins on. John, how are you?
Good evening. Thanks. Glad to be here. Just too curious what you all have to say. Thank you.
Okay. Well, hopefully we say the right things here. Fred, good to see you.
Hi, great
How
to be
many
here.
how many cities apiece are you up to?
356 and 2 more in the hopper.
Wow.
Super. Congratulations. Good
Super.
job. There's Charles. How are you? Old Sapple?
I'm doing well, Rudy. Thank you.
Great.
Here in Tampa. Thank you.
Down in Tampa. That's right. Sharon, we haven't seen you since this morning. How are you doing?
Fine, thank you. How are you?
That was a great meeting today. Thank you.
It was.
That
Thank
was
you.
super. That was super. Mary Jo, how are you? Albertine, Mumsy, how are you? How are all the kids?
We are doing good. We are doing great. I'm excited for this meeting today.
That's super. Lisa is on here. Lisa, how are you tonight?
Pretty good. Thanks, Rudy.
And Joni's on. Joni, how are you? She's on her iPhone there. Sierra Deli. So I don't think I missed any.
Doing good. Thank you.
Great, great. That's super. I don't think I missed anybody. If I did, holler out. But great to see everybody tonight. We, as you can see from our speaker here, we are covering the globe. Dr. OJ, our club has 107 members around the planet here in 10 different countries, mostly in the United States. But and I mentioned with Sharon there this morning, we actually had a meeting this morning with a Rotary Club in St. Petersburg, Russia. So we've got some dear Rotary friends there too, as well. And with some of these connections. So we're very excited to have you join us tonight. And I'm going to let Anil introduce you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Rudy. Thank you, David. Thank you for all of you for joining. I'm very delighted to have my colleague and mentor, Dr. David Orme Johnson from Maharishi International University here presenting today about peace, peace at all levels. So I'll let him say that part. But we were talking about, I think, Barbara, you were saying, just hearing David was so sweet. Well, it's like, he's spent so much time with Maharishi. I think he got that heart value totally settled. He was Maharishi's right-hand man on all research related to transcendental meditation. He's the editor of all 8 volumes of research. Each one is about 100 papers. He has written 800 papers on his own, but he has edited all the volumes of research. So he's a completely walking encyclopedia of all research on TM. You say, what is it about this? He will just cite this author this year, and maybe on this page, you will see the chart, which will explain what it is. So it's just such a delight that he's really been, helping me and mentoring me, warming my heart on sort of all this things around collective consciousness. But he has researched on all levels, the individual level consciousness, the group level, the whole societal level, world peace, and all that stuff. And he was actually former president of MIU also for a certain period of time, but his heart is in research, so he went back to a lot of research. And he actually has a website called truthabouttm.org, where sort of he just promotes the notion of TM for people who have various issues or questions about TM. He's very humble and charming, and is working on his memoirs. So I'm looking forward to that. His wife Rhoda has already written hers. So, but anyway, David is just a treasure trove of wisdom, a gift to the world. And Tammy, appreciate your kind words and bringing your two friends. And Lisa, you are into the camp in many ways. So anyways, but I'm so delighted that we are all here. So David, welcome again to the club, and please share your words of wisdom about world peace. Thank you.
Thank you, Anil. It's a pleasure to be talking to people whose priority and interest is peace, because that's got to be the highest priority of all of us who were born at this particular time. And Anil was telling me some of the activities that some of you are doing, that Lisa's Police for Peace sounds fabulous. I think what I'm going to talk about is that groups meditating together will create peace. And so one of my tours, I happened to be talking to a police chief, and I told him that what we were trying to do was get at least 1% of the population of his city to practice TM, and I was telling him the research that it reduced crime, and he almost went to tears that someone was trying to help him in his job. Everybody's blaming the police, you have to do more, and here we were, trying to create an atmosphere where there was less crime. So I'm very, very sympathetic with that. And Tammy, Anil tells me you have groups and you have music with peace, and music is, of course, soothes the savage beast, we've always heard, and because that's the truth. And it's one of the great peacekeeping and collective coherence creating technologies that humanity has. Probably the most ancient one, where everybody sang and danced together, that we see in all of the primitive cultures. And so that's part of peace. The essence of peace is working together. It's not, the most powerful adaptive mechanism, which has made humans very powerful, is the ability to work together. You can have a dozen men bring down a mastodon by working together, a beast that's 20, 30 times their size. And David Wick, it was really nice to be connected with you and to see what you're doing, and the aspirations to be positive and communicate with others. This is all very wonderful. And I think what I'm going to tell you about is going to help everybody who's trying to create peace. The idea is that, as I said a few words at the beginning before the taping started, that we all have at the basis of our mind this infinite area of peace. And that when we contact that, it creates peace in our minds, it creates peace in our behavior, peace in our physiology, and peace in the people we interact with. And that translates into creating peace and collective consciousness. And it's creating this, what we're trying to do is create an atmosphere in collective consciousness that will be conducive and supportive of all efforts to create peace. At any time in the world, there are peacekeepers everywhere. And if the atmosphere is more coherent, then the dynamics of society supports them. And if it's incoherent, then it supports those who are creating wars and things. And yes, I was born in 1941. That was the year that the United States entered into the war with the Pearl Harbor, and and I was born in El Paso, and the atomic bomb was first set off in White Sands Proving Ground, just north of El Paso. You know, in about 5 years later, 1980, 1945. And my whole life, I've been very kind of absorbed with the idea of peace and worried about it. When I was a little kid, I used to worry about, you know, walking to school and that there would be a war. And it was, you would see in the newspaper that a new bomb, hydrogen bomb was set off. And on the front page of the newspaper, probably all of you saw this, a mushroom cloud in the Pacific, and it's lifting great ships, you know, throwing them up into the air. And I used to debate with myself, if I could do something for peace and no one knew about it, would I do it? This debate. And one day when I was a kid in about the 5th grade, and there was a sudden bam, like an explosion, and I immediately hit the deck. Turns out what it was a sonic beam, boom, of a jet that had come over the school, and before they outlawed them doing that, and all the kids laughed, and but I was terrified. I didn't do it as a joke, but I was sort of very happy that they thought I was just cutting up. And the teacher, I was sort of this really quiet kid. Then the teacher looks at me, and she had this look like, oh, you know, our children, they have this fear, this underlying fear. And the parents are all talking about building bomb shelters. And so everybody in people born at our time are concerned with peace on some level, whether they're trying to do anything about it or not. It's in the background. There could be a war. The whole planet could be annihilated at any time. So I've been interested in this topic for a long time. So let me get to my slides. If I can share screen, is that going to be possible? I'll try it. There we go. Okay. And it's this one, I do believe. Do you see my slides here?
Yeah, go ahead and go to slideshow so we see the full slide.
Yeah. Okay. So this is my talk. Proven values and impact of transcendental meditation technique, peaceful mind, peaceful body, peaceful society, peaceful world, presented by me to you guys today. And the main idea is that during TM, what happens, it takes the mind from an active level, which is illustrated here at the top of the graph, and with the mantra, and it becomes quieter and quieter, illustrated by these circles. And I didn't mean for that to happen. I don't know how I can stop it from going automatically. Anyway, to the source of peace, which is transcendental consciousness. And so that is, and the mind settles down, the mind becomes more peaceful and inner silence. Other meditation techniques tend to keep us on the surface of thinking about things or contemplating about things, so that our guided imagery, etc., those keep the mind more on a surface level. So TM is, I want to put it in context, what I'm talking about, to discriminate different kinds of meditation. So there's 3 major kinds of meditation that have been discriminated, and each one has its own associated EEG signature. So when you focus on something, like focusing attention on some object, Zen, Qigong, compassion, Vipassana, these meditation techniques have a EEG signature called in the gamma frequency, which is high frequency, and that's what you see when you're focusing, voluntarily focusing your mind. At a slightly quieter level than that is open monitoring, where people are monitoring their thoughts, trying to maintain a non-reactive, neutral attitude towards them. And this is mindfulness, for example, or Kriya Yoga. And during those meditations, you see theta EEG, which is 4 to 8 cycles per second. And during automatic self-transcending, which is the technique which takes the mind from the surface automatically down to the quiet level. The example of that is transcendental meditation. And that's associated with an alpha 1 EEG, 8 to 10 hertz. So my main point here is the different meditation techniques are different. They're different in what you do. They're different in their goals. They're different in the physiology that they produce in the brain. And this is a picture of the EEG during TM. One of the main characteristics of it is that it's synchronous. So here we're looking at brain waves measured from different parts of the brain, from the frontal and different and parietal, occipital, and the back of the brain. And what you're seeing is that they're all going up and down together. I can see my cursor or not. And that's what we mean by synchrony. They're very, very harmonious. So why would we care about EEG synchrony? Well, first, let me show you one more map that illustrates what's happening in your brain when you do TM. So this is illustration of eyes open on the left. Down at the bottom, you see the person's eyes open. If you look right above, that's also eyes open. That's looking at the head from the top. So it's the nose, ears on the sides. And these different dots on the head are not a skin disease, but those are illustrating placements of electrodes. And the lines connecting them mean that there's a high degree of coherence between those different areas. So with your eyes open, depending on what the brain is doing, different areas couple with each other and are synchronous or coherent. But when you close your eyes more, which is the middle set of heads, you can see that more of the areas become connected or synchronous with each other in this alpha coherence. And during TM, you see that the whole brain becomes connected. So it's a state of high connectivity. So why do we care? Well, it turns out that EEG coherence in the alpha frequency is associated with all of these different things. Starting on the right, decreased neuroticism and decreased anxiety. So it's a state of peace. Decreased anxiety indicates inner peace or psychological peace. Increased emotional stability, but also associated with improvements in cognition, improved grade point average. Studies have shown that improved concept learning ability, increased intelligence, increased creativity, increased moral reasoning ability, improved neurological efficiency, increased inner orientation, which means that a person sees things not completely as materialistic, but there's some sort of deeper kind of spiritual reality, and that's related to a more coherent brain. And also greater self-awareness and more frequent experiences of transcendental consciousness, which is this pure consciousness. So another indication of increased psychological peace that happens when you can transcend to experience the inner peace within yourself is that it decreases anxiety. A meta-analysis is a compilation of all the research that's been done in an area. So this is looking at 146 studies which have looked at these different techniques, TM, a placebo, relaxation response, other meditations, progressive relaxation, EEG, biofeedback, mantra meditation, concentration. All of them reduced anxiety. This is the size of the effect. So the further out the bar goes means the bigger the effect on reducing anxiety compared to control groups. Concentration, which you're focusing to keep the mind active, is not relaxing. It doesn't reduce anxiety. But TM has approximately twice the effect size of these other techniques. And I think it's so powerful for reducing anxiety because this inner silence within your own mind just integrates the whole physiology and is very calming. So this is me in 1972, and I had done some research, and I'm talking to Maharshi with Dr. Keith Wallace. I think I was 31 years old there. Keith Wallace was the first one to look at the physiology of what happens in the brain and physiology during TM. And he published it in Science Magazine and then American Journal of Physiology and Scientific American. And his basic point is that that there's a state of pure consciousness or transcendental consciousness which is different. The pattern is different from waking, dreaming, or sleeping. It's a fourth major state of consciousness, as it is described in the ancient literature, that samadhi or pure consciousness is different. It's different from waking, dreaming, and sleeping. It's kind of sleep-like in the sense that the body gains very deep rest, but it's waking-like that the person is awake on the inside during it. And I was telling Maharishi about my research on autonomic stability. And autonomic stability is a measure of little stress responses that you can measure that the person has when they're sitting at rest. You know, sitting with your eyes closed, nothing is happening. And you can measure that some people have more of these tiny stress responses and others have less. So it's a measure of physiological peace. And what I found is that meditators had, when you meditate, it reduces these responses. The whole physiology becomes quieter, but also over time, the physiology becomes habituated to function at a quieter, more peaceful, calmer style, even during activity. And that's what's shown here. This is comparing meditators with non-meditators who are sitting with their eyes closed. So they're both doing the same thing. They're just sitting, eyes closed, resting. And if you saw two guys on a park bench and one was practicing TM and the other was just sitting there with their eyes closed, I don't think you tell the difference between them from looking at them. But if you can measure their physiology, you see that the heart rate, the skin resistance responses, plasma lactate, respiratory rate, all of these are measures of stress or sympathetic activity. All of those would be lower in the person meditating. And over time, that calmer style of physiology manifests even during activity. So it's like one is calmer and more rested, and then has more adaptive energy for dealing with things when they actually do happen. And this is another study that I did in 1987, looking at Blue Cross insurance statistics on 2,000 meditators over a 5-year period. So this is another indication of physiological peace, which is fewer hospital admissions in all categories of disease. This is something that had never been seen before. And when I first sent the paper to the journal, I just reported the overall average that the meditators had about half of the hospitalization. And so the editors and reviewers said, well, let's look at all the categories. It must be, it's just some minor things that the TM is less than. And to everybody's surprise, including mine, they were low. The TMers were lower in every category of disease. And heart disease, for example, was like 87% lower. And so mental disease, about 40% lower and so forth. So how can that happen? What is happening? How can one simple thing, cause changes in all of these different bodily systems? And the answer is that this unique kind of rest that TM provides gives an additional period in which the person can heal. So we know that healing takes place during sleep and during dreaming. And everybody in both groups had sleep and dreaming. The TM technique was in blue. I didn't mention that. I hope you saw that. And the control group was in red. So they all have sleep and dreaming, but then the meditators are also twice a day, which is the recommended schedule, are practicing TM, and they have this additional period in which they're deeply rested and the brain is very coherent. So the body is like, so whatever is going on with the person in that day, in the state of deep rest, whatever, all the homeostatic feedback systems are detecting what's wrong, and then they're putting into place the healing mechanisms or the corrective mechanisms which the body has for dealing with those situations. So some guy may have something going on with the heart, and the heart will be healed. The body will detect that. Someone might have some other issue going on, whatever it is, it could be anything. The body has its mechanisms for dealing with it. And so TM is just a technique that allows the body to do its thing to heal. And the body is like a team, you know, with all these different systems. You have the cardiovascular system and the immune system and the digestive system. And they all are working together to keep us healthy and alive. And if the team is communicating with each other better, which is what coherence means, it means there's communication between all the different parts of the nervous system and therefore all the different parts of the body, then the team will play a better game. And I think that's what's happening. That when you meditate, then your team is communicating and it's playing a better game and healing and keeping us healthy. And this was an interesting result, broke it down by an age category. And it turns out that the meditators, the TM group, had about half the hospitalization rates in the children and then the young adults. And interestingly, the older adults, they had almost 69 and doctor visits 74% less. So there, aging is the big stress test that we all go through. And of course, hospitalization goes up with age and things start falling apart. But the slope of increase is much lower with the meditators. So it's a very, very anti-aging. And it makes sense that if you sit down and can get this extra deep rest twice a day, and you're dealing with different issues and you're not accumulating stress as much, that you will be more successful in aging. And it was not only hospitalization, but also visits to the doctor, which were much lower in the meditators than the controls. So that again, it's peace on a physiological level across the entire lifespan. Now, what about interacting with other people? I just put in this one, which is improved work and personal relationships, which is indication of increased peace in the sociological setting. So it's functioning on all levels. So if you get this inner silence within yourself, the mind becomes more peaceful, less anxiety and so forth. The body becomes more peaceful, increased autonomic stability. So our theory is that when people become peaceful within themselves, just as the brain becomes more connected, as we saw in that earlier slide, here's an illustration of people in society, and when the ones who are meditating are suddenly creating this kind of coherent grid, which is going throughout society. And early on, we found that if even 1% of the population practiced TM, that it became more peaceful in the sense of reduced crime rate. So this study is showing 11 cities in which 1% of their population was practicing TM. Those are the blue bars on the left. And the control cities, which were similar geographics in every way, and they were continuing to increase in crime as they had before. Most of them, some of them went down, but on the whole, they increased in crime by 8.3%, and the TM group, matched group, decreased by 8.2%, over 16% decrease in crime relative to the controls. So this was the first indication that if you had enough people in society, even a few people in society meditating together, that it would have a beneficial effect on the whole collective consciousness of the society. So this is a study where we then had the idea of taking this technology into trouble spot areas. And this was an international peace project in the Middle East. And this is me on the left. Now a little bit older. This is 83. And Dr. Charles Alexander from Harvard, and we collaborated on this study. We're standing in front of the wall of Jerusalem. It was a very kind of historic place. We were where the meditator group is located was on Mount Olive, and a lot of history there. And what we found was, is that there was an inverse relationship in the size of the group, which is the dotted line here going up, and a measure of war intensity, which is war deaths, and then a measure of the intensity of the war, of the fighting. And so as the group got bigger, and this is daily data over a 2-month period, you could see that suddenly the war index dropped during those days. And then when the group size dropped, the fighting popped up again. And then when the size of the group increased in this period, the fighting decreased, and so forth. There was generally an inverse relationship. And it was not only did it impact on the fighting in Lebanon, but also on the quality of life in Israel. So here again, we see the dotted line showing the changes in the size of the group, and the solid line is showing a quality of life index where upward is improved quality of life. And the variables that went into the index were the war deaths, war intensity, crime, traffic fatalities, fires, stock market prices, and the national mood. So this index of all those things put together very closely, as statistical things go, followed the changes in the size of the group. Quality of, and it's reversible. That's an important point. You increase the size of the group, like turning a knob, and suddenly peace increased, quality of life increased. Turn the knob down, and the whole thing reverses. Turn it up again. So it's a very powerful demonstration of causality. And I'm going to show 2 more studies that have that. And also I should mention that all the aspects of this study, what variables we were going to use, how we were going to analyze the data, was posited in advance to a project review board, an outside project review board of scholars, some at Harvard and some at other universities. And so we told them what we were going to do, and we told them, how many meditators they were periodically during the experiment. So it was all completely objective, and all of the measures are objective data. They're data, official data from various agencies in Israel. So here's another study, and this one, 4,000 peacekeepers gathered in Washington, D.C. to create a demonstration project in Washington. And we predicted in advance to a project review board that when we had the group there, it would reduce violent crime in Washington. And at the time, which was 1984, Washington was considered to be the crime capital of the world. It had a very high murder rate. And so what was found is that that when the group during the experimental period, when the group was there, which is in the blue, that crime, which is the black line, deviated from its predictive level. So what this is showing is the black line the dark line is showing the actual crime, and the dotted line is showing the prediction of crime without the group, but things like the temperature and what had happened previously at that time of year. This is weekly data, by the way. So you can see that the actual crime is closely following the dotted line. It's following the predicted level. So the prediction equation is doing quite well. But then when we get to this period when the group was there, the prediction is that crime is going to keep going up and be quite high. But what actually happened was it dropped down by 23%. And this slide shows the correlation between the size of the group, which again is the dotted line, going up from about 600 at the first week of the project to 4,000. So as it increases, as the size of the group increases with the dotted line going up, what we see is that the violent crime starts decreasing, especially when the size of the group suddenly increased here at about week 4. Then you see a real change in the reduction in the slope of the crime rate. And then in the last 2 weeks, when the size of the group was almost 4,000 or reached 4,000, then the violent crime decreased very precipitously. So now this is the third experiment, and this is the most recent one. This is the Golden Dome at MIU, where Neil and I hang out. And these are meditation domes, and this is inside one of the domes, the meditators. And so the experiment here was to look at the relationship between the size of the group, which is the blue line going up, and it's going up here to about 1,800. And our formula, which I haven't had time to go into, but we have a formula for how many people you would need doing the program together to create an effect in a population. And it's around 1,800 at this period of history. And so during this period, we reached that size. And what all these are different measures from the FBI and from the Center for Disease Control.
Maybe we lost.
Yeah.
I think he'll join back.
Did you lose me?
Okay, yeah, David, if you could.
You lost me?
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you okay. If you could just share your charts again, that'll be great.
Can you see them?
No, not yet. If you could share.
Okay, no. I'm not finding the Zoom. Oh dear.
You're up on the screen. Your slides are
Oh,
not
there you
anymore.
are. Okay, there you are. Share screen. Okay, sorry about that. Screen 2, I think. Yeah, this is the one. Share. Okay, back to my PowerPoint. Here we go. Okay, so what you see remarkably during the experimental period here, all of these different indicators of negative trends, murder, rape, assaults, robbery, all of these are highly unpeaceful. Infant mortality, drug deaths, vehicle fatalities, children deaths by injuries, all of them simultaneously started coming down. And when the size of the group, the blue line, started dropping because we lost funding to maintain this big group, all the negative indices started turning around, especially about 2013, when the size of the group really dropped, and then negativity really shoots up again. There's this one kind of looks like an outlier. That's actually drug-related deaths, huge problem in the United States, people dying of overdoses. But during the experimental period, it actually, the slope of it also just totally leveled out. And then after the group started decreasing again, then it all shot up again. So it's a very powerful demonstration. And these are 3 of 60 different studies on this phenomenon. So what we're doing now is trying to create, and have been for years, centers of peace around the world. And here's some, throughout Central and South America, for example. And here's some different groups of children around the world. I'll show you these meditating. There's schools in Peru and India meditating together, and Bali and Kenya. And most recently, this is the group in Ukraine. And then we also have a meditator group in Moscow. And these are new meditators in Moscow that were just recently trained. So our effort is to create coherence creating groups in both sides of that conflict and in the world as a whole. And hopefully it will be contained and quickly come to an end. And that's it. Vasudeva Kumbhakam, which is a Sanskrit for the world is my family. It's from the Manusmriti, which is in the Vedic literature. And this is a nice Christmas card. A friend of mine, artist friend of mine, sent me years ago. It's in 2017. So I will now escape and come back for discussion. If I can find the right button. Stop. Share. Okay, I think I'm back.
You are. Thank you for sharing that information. You
You're
guys
welcome.
invested your life to this, so it's interesting to see the data. Do we have questions out there? Go ahead, David Wick.
One of the things that really got my attention here, when you're talking about coherence, and certainly in the meditation and meditative practices, there's really a direct coherence that takes place. I'm wondering about in a community, because many of us are engaged with different peace building activities and communication in a community, like articles in the paper or other ways of talking about more heartfelt things. Do you have a sense as to, and perhaps not a study, but a sense as to what we do in that level that does add to greater coherence, that does help people be on the more positive side?
Well, if you're meditating, personally, it empowers you to do things for peace, and many of the meditators are devoted to that. But the main thing is that we're trying to do is to create this coherence in the atmosphere so that everybody is empowered who's working for peace. But we have all kinds of projects going on, peacekeeping projects. Around the world and in different areas like PTSD, all these different areas. The David Lynch Foundation is funding teaching children around the world for their development, but also for their peacekeeping side effects that they have. But if the people who are meditating will become more peaceful in their behavior and more cordial in their behavior towards others. So there's studies in businesses and industries that show that they get along better with workers, and studies in prisons where reduced fighting and reduced hostility. One of my friends introduced TM into Folsom Prison in San Quentin, and he was actually there teaching continuing education, teaching philosophy and art and things like that. So these three guys came up to him. One of them was this huge guy called Tony, and they said, "We want you to give us A's. We need to have A's in this course for our parole or whatever." And these guys had between them, George said, about 4 murders and 4 or 5 murders. And George just laughed. And they were astonished. And they said, "What do you have? What do you have, man? What do you want?" I get telling about TM. Anyway, he taught TM in Folsom and also in San Quentin. And it ended up that all of these gangs, which would never sit in the same room together, much less with their eyes closed, we're all sitting around meditating together. You had the head of the Hells Angels, Sonny Barger, and you had the Mexican Mafia and the Aryan Brotherhood. So I don't know if I answered your question, but you do become peaceful in your behavior dealing with others. And the idea of coherence and collective consciousness is that that everybody in the environment becomes more in that direction, as if they were also meditating, because everybody has pure consciousness in them. And in fact, research has shown that we experience it every night when we fall asleep and wake up. We go through this junction point between waking and dreaming, or between waking and sleeping. That junction point that we go through, that transition point, is actually transcending. It's that same pure consciousness state. And it has the same physiology, the same power spectra, the same coherence spectra. The difference with TM is, it was okay, well, what's the big deal about TM? Everybody's doing this all the time anyway. The difference is that with TM, you're kind of hanging in that space for 20 minutes, where it's, instead of transitioning through it in like 2 or 3 minutes. And that has all these beneficial effects on the health and on thinking and so forth.
Great. Thank you.
Arthur?
Decades ago, back in the 80s, my friend Ed Winchester taught TM meditation in the Pentagon, and also at a prison near Washington D.C., and had major impact. And I took TM, and I've been trying to. I practiced over the years, but I can never get to 20 minutes. I mean, in 5 minutes, my head starts spinning with creative ideas, and I'm off on another thought. How do you, for a person who's got a mind that is very active, how do you advise staying on the mantra for 20 minutes?
Well, it's that's a busy businessman thing. It's it's very I would say the biggest commonest stress that we all have is time pressure. We live in this insane world of trying to do stuff, and we're teaching TM in medical school at Loyola, and they're under this huge pressure and all this workload and staying up all night doing stuff. But you just have to learn, get checking. The answer is have your teacher check you. You learn to not try to resist thoughts. All that bubbling up and all of that stuff, it's dealing with your issues. And so this one strategy I have is, I have a lot of stuff going on, and maybe it's negative stuff. Then I have to have the thought, but this is stuff that's going out. Let's just let it go. Let's let it go and see how you feel afterwards. See if it really will feel better, but don't jump up, because that can if you jump up and you're kind of quiet, you may not think you're quiet, but you jump up and it jars the nervous system, and then you may find yourself feeling irritable during the day. But you just go by the instructions, which is, you find yourself on thoughts, you easily come back to your mantra, to your technique. And if you jump into thoughts again, you don't resist. You don't try not to think, because trying only creates activity. When I was a little kid, about maybe 10 years old, and I was falling asleep, and my mind was rocking back and forth, and like in sleep, it's sort of these drowsy, unconnected thoughts. And then suddenly, whoosh, I fell into this transcendental consciousness. I didn't know what it was, but I felt completely blissful and so perfect and harmonious. And I came out and what is that? There was nothing in religion or my environment that had talked anything about such a thing. But after that, I kept trying to make it happen. I thought, if that's going to happen again, I'm going to grab it, And of course, that focusing and trying to make it happen, it won't happen, because that creates agitation in the mind. So you just have to go with the technique. Don't try to make it be quiet all the time. TM is not quiet all the time. Throwing off stresses is probably the biggest value overall. In the long run, you're getting rid of junk. And that happens, it continues to happen because we keep taking stuff on. Maharishi says that the human nervous system is geared to develop to enlightenment. All of the self-repair and developmental things that are wired into us should make us enlightened by the time we're 25. What is enlightenment? enlightenment is like the trait of having transcendental consciousness established all the time. So during meditation, you get that quietness. And then if you had that quietness all the time, and we see in the research, it's to some extent it's there, but if it's really there, you really just have this infinite unbounded awareness all the time. That's what we mean by enlightenment. And then the advantages are you're more aware, you know, all the things the mindfulness talks about. That's what Buddha was talking about. That's having that transcendental consciousness there all the time. But what happens is in our civilization, for God knows how long, it's been so stressed that the nervous system doesn't quite recover during sleep and dreaming. So the nervous system has a lot of flexibility, wide range of dynamic range, but we push it beyond the ability to come back at night. And so then we build up stresses and build up stresses. So we need something special. We need a technique. We need a special technique, meditation technique, to add on to our daily routine. And that's TM is one thing. It provides that. There could be many things.
Tammy,
to answer your
hand up there.
question, yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Go ahead, Tammy.
Thank you, Dr. OJ. What a wonderful presentation. Really just a fabulous professor you are, and so much to learn from you. My question is, within the Rotary, this organization, we have a special interest group called Rotarians Meditating for Peace. And we gather on the first Monday of every month and meditate for about an hour. And I play the harp intermittently while we're meditating to help us hold our focus and help us hold our vibration up so that then those vibrations go out to the collective. And I wondered if you had any thoughts about our process, and or if you feel like I'd like to hear your ideas about what our process is, I guess. Thank you.
Well, I think music is key. It's creating harmony in a more outer direction because you're hearing it. It's a sensory thing, and so that's very powerful. And it can create transcending also. I think that Beethoven symphony or Haydn or many kinds of music, and they're going along and then it comes to a silence and the whole audience transcends. They just fall into that silence. So so it could be that it's creating these kind of waves from outer, and then when they feel that kind of bliss and everything from the music that they're going inward, they are transcending. But it is because it's a sensory thing. It's keeping awareness more outward. So it's not doing the same thing as just meditating and allowing yourself to go within and reduce stresses, as Arthur mentions. And of course, I have a lifetime of unstressing. I can tell you all about it. Thoughts and everything. But I don't know, did that answer your question?
Yes, thank you. Yeah. And again, thank you for your wonderful work and your lifetime of helping contribute to peace. What a gift you are.
Thank you. Well, there could be different opinions.
Barbara.
I have a question. You know, I noticed in the research that when the group that was meditating kind of fell off the meditation, that crime and everything came back. And so I'm wondering, what is the way that we can have this harmony all the time? It's almost like when you start the meditation and you know you're going to have some drop-offs, you have this refill of new people so that we're constantly doing the meditation so that we get the harmony and the results of the meditation for longer periods. It's almost like getting new influences and new people to meditate so that it continues, the harmony continues. Is that possible?
Yes, I mean, that's the goal, is to establish full-time, regular peacekeeping groups. And we've proposed all kinds of ways, and it's just hasn't quite materialized yet. We have the schools throughout South America and around the world, but then they're with COVID, 2019, schools everywhere, all our groups fell apart. And what happened? We'd been in a time of peace, and now suddenly the Russians are deciding they're going to reestablish the Soviet Union and conquer everybody. And so, I think it's related. So, but yes, we want to have, I think ultimately what we would like is that everybody in school have an opportunity to learn transcendental meditation and other kinds of meditations that are proven, or other techniques that are useful. And there are many, and but it's a regular thing, and so it's part of society. But we've proposed you could have stable groups with retired people. What do we have to do? And we're tired anyway. And this is rejuvenating to meditate, have them meditate, extra hours every day. It could be, of course, within a school setting, it could be in prisons. The prisoners could become the peacekeepers of the world. They're there, they're stuck together. One of my first studies was in a prison, the autonomic stability. We were coming back from a residence course where we were all meditating extra over the weekend, and we're all feeling really high. And we in northern New Mexico, and we drove by La Tuna Federal Penitentiary outside of El Paso. We all had the idea, oh, those guys could be doing a residence course and meditating all the time. So I called up the warden. My wife pretended to be my secretary and said, I'm Dr. Orme Johnson's secretary. I was just sort of a junior faculty teaching some courses at the University of Texas at El Paso. It was right after I got my PhD. And so warden, okay, he was skeptical, but then the assistant warden and the psychologists were very interested. So we did a project. So what I needed at that time was to have a longitudinal study. So I thought this is going to be perfect. You teach the people in the prison, when you come back, they're going to be there. That's a big problem in longitudinal studies. You can't find your subjects, especially if they're students after some time. But I came back after 2 months, and they'd moved them around. It turns out they had the policy of breaking up gangs. And so anyway, and then they didn't make any facility for these guys to meditate. I said, oh man, I've lost my study. But some of them did meditate. And so you had a range of how often they meditated. Some of them just almost not at all. And some of them, one guy was meditated twice a day, every day for the entire 2 months. And what did he do? He went into a broom closet, and then he'd come out smiling, and then they'd make all kinds of jokes. Say, what were you doing in there, But anyway, so then I looked at the correlation between how often they meditated and how much they changed, and it was strongly correlated. And so I ended up having a study. But anyway, that's sort of totally off the subject here. But you could have groups in prisons. You could have groups anywhere. You could, So
Bob, you'll be the last question here.
Yeah, hello.
Okay.
I took meditation, transcendental meditation, in the early 70s. And my flaw was I couldn't get around to doing it twice a day. So since I'm the kind of person who wants to follow the rules, I just didn't do any of the meditation. I just gave it up. But years passed, and I thought, I'm going to try if I can do it once a day. And that was like 1987.
You can do it as often as you want.
Is that true? Well, good. I'm trying to get out from under this. So another thing, I just want to tell you that our
twice a day,
our Cathedral City Peace Initiative has started a weekly meditation at 4 p.m. every Wednesday in the Senior Center. So just think of that. And that's part of our initiative to become an international city of peace. We're working on that. Thank you.
Beautiful. Yeah. Yeah. If you learn TM in the 70s or any time, and then you fell off, you can always be checked with a teacher, any TM teacher. And the checking just takes you gently through the process and gets you restarted. And it's very pleasant and rejuvenating. And if you can only meditate once, meditate once. If you can only meditate 10 minutes, meditate 10 minutes.
No, I could do
But the
20
ideal
minutes.
is to do it twice a day.
I could
Twice
do
a day
20 minutes, but
because you want to, but not twice a day. Yeah.
yeah.
The reason that twice a day is recommended is the goal is to make that state a trait. You want to habituate the body to maintain that more relaxed style of functioning outside an activity in everything that you're doing. And so that's the goal. That's the reason, and the goal or the carrot for doing it twice a day is that it has cumulative benefits outside of meditation. It's not just for getting calm at that time. It's for changing your physiology to work in a more enlightened way.
Okay, thank you.
Well, Dr. OJ, thank you so much for sharing with us tonight. I'm going to turn it back to David Wick.
Well, thank you so much. This is, again, part of our awareness and how we can function in the world, the greater well-being in our own lives, but also where we, influence others and our presence bringing greater peace building. And along that line, this is right in alignment. There's going to be next week, which is going to be very connected here. And so May 31st is going to be Dr. Renee Mira. And the subject line that she has is Raising Peaceful Kids for a Peaceful World. And she is an unwavering community activist and tenacious broadcaster with a burning passion for accurate and compelling storytelling. Dr. Mira has been consistently singled out in the Asian Indian community as one of the most prominent broadcast journalists in the tri-state area. Her signature show, Renee Report, has developed top-notch quality content for audiences and information for many years. She has been an advocate for the South Asian community and a civic community educator, and has dedicated herself to addressing the needs of migrant communities of the tri-state area through the platform of television and social media. She has worked extensively with children and their needs, and very much through meditation. She is the Vice President of the United Nations Staff Recreational Council Science of Spirituality Club that holds regular talks and workshops on the benefits of meditation in the United Nations. So it's going to be a fascinating gathering next week, and we look forward to seeing you. And practicing the meditation is a continual learning journey. So thank you very much, Dr. Johnson, for sharing your experience. That it does have an impact. It does count.
Thank you for having me, and it was wonderful talking to you peacemakers, and I'm wishing you peace. I'm wishing us all world peace.
Truly.
We all want it. We all want it. And
truly. Great. Thank you. And thank you, Anil,
Shanti,
for bringing
Shanti.
Dr. Johnson.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, Anil.
Molly has joined in. I just wanted to see, she is like Renee Mera. She's from Detroit. She was a guest. She's a TM teacher, and she does exactly what Dr. Renee Mera does. So hopefully she can join again next week.
Okay, great.
Wonderful. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Super. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Dr. OJ.
Have a fine
Bye.
week.
Bye.
Bye.